All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you joining from different locations. Uh, we are still seeing people join in, so we'll give a few seconds before we get started here. All right. So while people join, let's get started with some of the initial formalities. So first of all, a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this webinar by Nimble Work, earlier Digite Inc. Many of you are familiar with Digite and the brand change, the name change that we went through in early March and became Nimble Work. This webinar is the first in this series that we call our Humanizing Work series. And we're very excited to speak with you as well as to see how you react to our positioning and messaging. And we welcome your comments and questions as well as any other suggestions on the topic and webinar as we go forward with our future webinars as well. So with that, today's webinar is Humanizing Work, the Next Frontier. We will start with a few introductions, and then I'll give you a quick background on Nimble Work, and then hand over the session to our main speaker today, Sudip Talari, and he will present on the topic of Humanizing Work, the Next Frontier. At the end, we will hopefully have a good Q&A session and hope to hear from many of you who are already joined. And whether you have a question, whether you have a suggestion, whether you have a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Just some housekeeping. We are recording the webinar, and we will make the webinar available to you, the recording available to you after the webinar in a follow-up email. Feel free to ask questions using the Q&A box that's available on the Zoom panel. I think it should be on the bottom of your screens. And we will try and take as many of the questions we get at the end of the session. All right, so I'll give a brief introduction to our speaker today, Sudip Talari. He's Head of Engineering and Products at Digite. Both of us have been long-time colleagues at Digite and friends before that. Both Suri and I have a shared love and experience with Kanban, and you can see that we have a fair bit of Kanban experience. Suri, as he's known, also spends a lot of time with customers, both in India as well as abroad, in helping them with their agile transformations and their Kanban journey. And he'll probably talk a little bit more about that when he does his introductions. I am a co-founder and I head marketing at Digite, and I work with customers as well in terms of our consulting engagements. And through these engagements, both of us, we have learned a lot about our customer landscape, our typical user personas, and how we help them solve a variety of challenges. I'll let Suri talk more about himself once I hand over the session to him. Just a quick introduction to Nimble Work for those of you who may not know us as much. So we are a adaptive project management tooling company, and these are some of the things that we help you transform the way that you deliver your work and your projects. And just a quick few slides on some of the capabilities that we provide. So we have extensive collaboration capabilities that we provide through our main Nimble Cafe interface. We have a whole set of tools that enable you to define and connect your strategy to execution. So you can get sort of a top to bottom end-to-end view of all the work that's going on in your organization and keep track of things. And we really are probably unique in the way that we enable you to link strategy to execution in a single sort of a framework. We are big into visual work management, and visual boards, Kanban boards are a big part of the interface that you see if you use one of our products. And the whole idea around that is to really let people manage their own work. And all you do is set priorities for them and let them sort of get out of the way, let them do their own thing. And that helps your teams deliver the best that they can. Obviously, agile and business agility, all of these are a key part of our offerings, whether you're using Nimble or any of our other products. And therefore, the ability to adopt agile principles through any framework that you use, whether it's Scrum or Kanban or Scrumban or others, you have the underlying capabilities that enable you to improve your time to market, improve your throughput, reduce overburdening of your teams uh, with a variety of tooling that's available through the system. Um, at the same time, we help you manage very sophisticated, very complex programs. So if you are in an environment where you have large, complex projects and you want to do more traditional planning while using agile execution, we enable you to do that with the kind of support that we provide for very standard milestone-based planning and execution capability as well. We have a lot of capability in terms of our AI technology, AI sort of body of work that we have done. And some of that is available through different products that we provide. And one of them, for example, here is the ability to use recommendation engines to help you do your work faster, to reuse work that's already been done within your organization and so forth. Just a quick few background facts about the company itself. We've been around for a long time, nearly 20 years now. We have customers around the world. We have been covered by Gartner in a variety of the reports, especially the Magic Quadrant for Enterprise Agile Planning Tools. And we are present in terms of our own offices in the US, Europe, as well as in Asia Pac. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, our products support adaptive project and work management. And of course, we provide both SaaS as well as on-prem capabilities as well. In our customers, you'll see some very well-known brands and probably some not so well-known brands. We support a variety of customers from very small to very large enterprises. All right. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Sudipta. Suri, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mahesh. Let me share my screen and let me know if you can see my screen here.
I'm seeing your website. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Thanks, Mahesh. Good morning, good evening to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Let me get started without any further ado. So what I wanted to kind of start today, obviously, this is just a list of some of our customers that we have. But what I wanted to start today was the point around what triggered this conversation around humanizing work. And what happened was around 3 years back when COVID really hit us, we really, obviously everybody went remote, everybody went distributed, everybody went completely in a virtual mode. And many of you might even recall that the industry saw a lot of growth. So we were having a lot of people join us, laterals, campus hires, and we were suddenly faced with a scenario where we had almost 25-30% of our workforce who had never met us, who we had never worked with, whom we had not engaged at all with. They had never been to then a Digite office. And I was interacting with some of my senior colleagues. I was interacting with some of my friends in the industry. And this scenario was not just unique to us. Many of us kind of were struggling with this issue that, okay, suddenly we have this workforce expansion in a very virtual distributed way. And while we had very innovatively and creatively figured out how to work in a completely virtual mode, our people engagement was becoming a real challenge. For the people who had been with us for a long period of time, this issue was still not a big deal, but it was very prominent for us to figure out how do we integrate this workforce that is joining us in that time period. So we had been doing a lot of work around this people engagement problem even before COVID. We were doing fit for purpose analysis of our people, whether people feel that we are fit for the purpose that they're working with us for. And I've done several webinars and spoken in conferences about the kind of data that we got from those kind of interactions, and how we changed our company approach and we are working based on the feedback that we were getting. So we were working on this problem, but this new thing that suddenly hit us within literally 3 to 4 weeks was an enigma in front of us, and we were struggling to figure out what to do. So I've been in the industry for over 3 decades. I've performed different functions from sales to delivery to product development, but this was still a new beast for us. And even though I'm a very passionate, lean, agile practitioner as well as advocate, we have ourselves transformed our own delivery completely with mind-boggling results. I've helped our customers, achieve a similar success, but yet this was a problem that we were actually struggling with. How do we engage people and get them associated with what we are trying to do, get them involved in trying to do? And for sure, this was a problem that was being felt across the industry itself. So if I step back a bit, this is the standard survey that most of you would have seen from the typical version 1 state of agile report that they publish. And what you will realize is that there is only one dimension out of all these, which is around team morale, that talks about people. Everything is around business, value, productivity, quality. There is just one dimension around here that talks about team morale. Now, team morale, definitely here people would find it better than what it used to be in the earlier days of working, when we used to work in very I would say even more disconnected world, right? Somebody would do a task allocation, somebody would say, you go ahead and do this, another person would, you go ahead and do this. So we used to be very task centric. Compared to that, obviously, when we went into this mode of where we would do stand-ups, see the work on a Kanban board, get a little better picture of what is happening, for sure we got definite positive results in terms of boosting of the employee morale that people are working. But despite that, there was a lot left to be desired from that engagement perspective. How deeply are people connected with the objective of what the team is trying to do, with the mission of the team, with the mission of the organization? I had recently attended a conference speak from this gentleman called Shiv Kumar. He's a fairly well-known gentleman in the Indian business circle. He was the ex-CEO of PepsiCo, Nokia in their heydays. And his point was that despite the best of, or a lot of collaboration tools, the fact is that these collaboration tools have only helped the collaboration between the teams to get better, which was never a big problem. Yes, it was some, you can say it has become better with the introduction of these tools, but the main problem was how these teams were actually interacting across teams, right? How they were interacting outside the silos of their teams and the groups that they were working in. And there was very little improvement there. For the most part, they were still competing with each other. There was still a lot of politics. So nobody's thinking or the thought about the larger objective of what an organization or the team is trying to do. That has not been benefited, despite a lot of these kind of tools that have been made available to us. It's largely within team collaboration that has gone to the next level. So as a result, during COVID times, we really had very stressful moments. People were spending long hours, and there are enough number of statistics and data that people were getting a lot more burnt out. Work-life balance was a lot more difficult proposition. We were spending a lot of hours on Zoom calls, on all kinds of conference mechanisms. And frankly speaking, that whatever little that we had in terms of where the boundary was between work and home life was even getting further mixed up. So we saw a lot of these phenomena in these last 3 years. Of course, in the last 1 year, I would say, as the industry has suddenly turned around and layoffs have become very dominant, uh, these trends have suddenly died down. But the fact is that when the going was good for the industry and for the people, we saw a lot of these kind of underlying current happening, where people were largely disengaged. People were largely not caring about, hey, you tell me what to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to cut off when I need to cut off. So the question is that what happened? Why is this large scale people disengagement, despite us talk so much about work life balance, specifically in the information technology industry, where there's so much talk about work life balance, empowerment, engagement, yet that has not really flown down to the teams on the ground and really created any meaningful impact. So when we went digging in, we found research of this one gentleman called Edward Hallowell, uh, fairly backdated research. Uh, and he talked about this concept of human moments at work. And he defined human moments as an authentic psychological encounter that can happen when two people share the same physical space. He called it physical space. I kind of expanded it into the phygital space because we are all largely virtual, with some working in an office environment, but we are seeing that mix of an ecosystem today. So he defined this human moment as that genuine, authentic psychological encounter that can happen when two people share the same space, physical or virtual. And a human moment has these two elements. One is two individuals got to be talking to one another dedicatedly. There's only one channel of communication between those two individuals. And for the time that they are talking between with one another, they have an emotional and an intellectual connect between what they are exchanging and what they're talking to one another with. The problem with virtual communication that we often have, even when we're talking virtually within teams, is that for the most part, and I'm sure you all have experienced it, we have all done it, we are hearing something, but we're also doing something else. There's a laptop session that is also doing something else while we are perhaps multitasking and doing three more things, including hearing the conference call that's going on. So that human moment, that connect between two individuals, which used to happen when we would go for a coffee with somebody else in that office environment, is significantly diluted. So until some time back, this was taken for granted, right? We could actually go ahead and do this exchange and build this human moment when we were all in the office environment. In fact, we would often go after the work on a Friday, go for a happy hour, spend even some social time together, get to bond between people, understand what's happening with their friends, family, what's going on, get to know that individual a little more. All that got killed the minute we went significantly and completely virtual. We now talk to people only when we have a transaction, we have a meeting, we need to do something, and our discussion is very focused around that. Anything else, if we even attempt to talk about, it would generally be branded as, yeah, why are we having a blah, 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 yada, yada, yada conversation? Why are you wasting my time? So that trust that used to build between two individuals used to have this human connection that is not getting any opportunity to be built. Now, these kind of relationships, when you actually have a human connect, they last a long time after people have even not people parted their ways. They have not, they're moved on, they're in different setup, but those relationships continue. My boss is a great example. He comes from an earlier generation of a workforce, but I see that his relationships with his people, not just one generation, but even two generations below, is extremely deep. He would know their families, he would know what's happening with their kids, where are their colleges, because their interactions at that point of time in the 70s and the 80s used to be extremely all-rounded. It was not just a work transaction related relationship. And the important thing is that these relationships need continuous reinforcement. The problem that I have with many teams saying, okay, we will do once in a quarter a team offsite. It doesn't work, because the team offsite works within 1 week of the team offsite getting done, is back to business as usual. You need a continuous reinforcement of these human moments so that your engagement with your people at work, so that your connection and your empathy with the people at work is reinforced. It begins, and the more longer you have that connection, the stronger and deeper is the empathy. Only then the team comes along. Otherwise, we are just a bunch of individuals working in a group. We all working in our own assignment. We do our own card. We finish our sprint. Life goes on. If somebody has a problem, I don't care. That's your problem. That's not how teams are supposed to be. Teams are supposed to come together as a group to make some collective outcome happen. So hyper digitization actually created this problem to a large extent, right? When we moved significantly from a cell phone to a laptop, and more and more and more, this problem started early 2000s, long before COVID happened, or I would say late 90s. And of course, COVID kind of completely blew this away, right? We know that, like I was discussing, there were mental health issues, there were burnout issues. Women were even more stressed out because they were struggling between their home and personal life versus trying to make up for what is happening at work. Everything became more difficult when we moved into this hyper digitized plus COVID environment. So what happens is when these human moments die down, there is an increase of what we call as toxic worry. So for example, you do something, but nobody responds to it, right? Okay, you feel that, okay, I've done something which is really worthy of praise, but because nobody is connected with you, because nobody has understood what you're doing, or what is the sophistication or the complexity or the difficulty of what you're doing, it largely creates no reaction. So you kind of start getting a sense that, hey, am I part of even a team that really appreciates what I'm trying to do, right? That even bothers what I'm trying to do. And then misunderstandings increase, right? It's just like one thing adding on top of one another. It's like a vicious cycle, till what it was perhaps a very small thing, a small communication not happening, slowly breeds onto itself, because there is no opportunity for really to vent it out. And slowly this negative cycle becomes a spiral, vicious cycle by itself. So what used to be a team where people would work with each other, people had a sense of, okay, I know this individual, I know what's going on with them, I know their challenges. Hey, if something is going, if they're having a hard time at home, let's figure out what to do and how we can make it happen. There's no scope for that sentiment to even come up, because those human moments have completely disappeared. Solitary confinement is known to be one of the most difficult ways of punishing people. And I'm not saying that that's the level that we are in today, but that is the problem that we are creating as we grow completely virtual, completely digital, and completely killing away these individual one-on-one human moments between two individuals. I don't know, some of you might have seen this talk from Simon Sinek. The audio quality is a little on the lower side, so please do bear with me. But I want to play this 1.5 minutes because it's very relevant to what we are talking about.
They will hate it at the beginning and then watch what happens. I'll give you some personal experiences. So when I go in to do workshops with people, I'll sit with a room full of executives. The first thing I do is I take a bucket or a bowl, I walk around the room, and I make them throw their phones in the bucket or the bowl. I get very dirty looks, and they're not happy. These are some senior executives that go like this, right? And I take all the phones away, and I put them on the side, and then we start the workshop. Here's what happens. Within a few minutes, everybody relaxes. People talk to each other. And the most important thing is the breaks. Because usually what happens in a break, and I watch it happen here too, as soon as we stand up, we go like this. You're all nice and respectful when I'm on the stage, but as soon as we stop, everybody's checking in, right? Now, as an aside, there's no quicker way to undermine the trust in your people than to feel the need that you have to check in every hour, as opposed to saying, hey guys, I'm gonna be out for a day, you got this, I trust you, right? Make it green, check with Steve, you know? But that's what we do. We respond to everything. But worse, we're not engaging with each other. The value of these events is each other. And so when I take these phones away from these executives, in the breaks, they sit and they talk to each other. Nobody goes to get their phone. I made no rule that said they can't. I just put them away and put them on the side. They actually talk to each other. The quality of the workshop is always fantastic. And the best part is when they walk out, they actually are talking to each other on their way out. In other words, camaraderie. Simply by forcing the phone to be taken away, it's a mechanism to get the behavior that we want. David Marquet's work talks about this. You don't try to change people's thinking to get the behavior. You change the behavior to change their thinking. And so sometimes you have to force it. There should never, ever, ever be a cell phone in a conference room. I don't care if you're with each other or with your parents, whatever, or you're meeting with your.
So that's the sentiment that we're talking about, which is that how do we build these human moments? Now, all the improvements that we have typically talked about have been around work optimization, right? We have talked about people how to, right from the time motion study days, how can I cut out a 1 30-second, 1/2 minute, 1 2 minute out of each step of the process and try to make it more and more optimal and optimal and optimal. And all our focus, like whether it is using tools, AI, whatever it is how to take that to the next level, right? What we have not focused on is the people who are engaged in doing that work. It has been assumed that by some magical way, they will respond to that situation. They will respond to that scenario. They will respond to the fact that, okay, every time the work environment changes or there's a whole generational shift in how work gets executed, guys will figure it out by themselves. People will figure it out by themselves. So therefore, the thought that what will happen to the human connect, what will happen to the engagement of the people who are working on the group, that's largely not been a focus of our conversations or of a productivity improvement for the longest time. So as a result, we have an environment where people to organization connect is down and people to people connect is down. Right? Now, mitigating this, we cannot say that, hey, switch off laptops and switch off mobiles. That's not what's going to work. We have got tremendous improvement and productivity improvement by using these technologies that we have today with them. The question is, how can we restore the human moments within this environment that we are in today? And there are very easy ways to do it. We'll talk about it. So humanizing work means two things. One is creating an environment where organizations can optimize the human potential by building these human connections. And next, and point two is where we empower people with freedom and choice over what they do, unleashing their interests and passions, creating an alignment to the strategy and needs. Point two, I think a lot of us that are familiar with the body of knowledge around lean agile will get it. And I will talk about, well, I'll deep dive into at least one specific point, which I think there is a really an epiphany moment that most people have not realized. But point one, I will delve all to in a little more detail. So let's talk about the first point. So how do we connect, collaborate with friends and family? And I think most of you, for the sake of time, most of you would agree that it has largely been through to platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, any of these, LinkedIn, any of these kind of platforms. What do these do? These essentially give us and help us do positive reinforcement. So that small like thing that you do whenever you see a friend like your picture is what you go back to check and see, okay, how many people like the picture that I posted? There's a very good reason why none of these platforms have a dislike button, right? They either have a thumbs up, they have a love, any of these reactions that they have, they're all positive reinforcement reactions, because it is the positive reinforcement that keeps bringing people back. That's what builds the connection. And let me play another audio for you.
Can I share with you something really freaking crazy? We did this little experiment, and all of you watching can do this experiment. We took 3 little petri dishes and we put seeds on this, some cotton bud with water and seeds. Okay, so A, B, and C. In one, it was basically the control group. We didn't do anything different. We just left it by a window. The second one was the negative. My team would look at the seed.
I hate you.
Yeah, I hate you. You're a stupid
ugly
little plant. You're an ugly seed. I bet when you sprout, your leaves will be upside down.
Wow.
You'll be tiny. The other plants won't like you. You're a puny little pathetic plant, and I hate you. It's nasty as you can get when you're talking to a plant. Now, the third one, just praise it with compliments. You are going to have the most beautiful green leaves. You are going to be so beautiful. You're going to light up a room. I'm so proud of you. You're going to grow so tall and healthy. Okay, now look at the picture. This is the picture. And you can see the control group is mid-size. The one that we insulted, the negative plant, the leaves are literally upside down.
No way.
And it's tiny and short. Now look at the tall one. That's the one that we express gratitude and appreciation to. Anybody can do this. In fact, in some school, they are using this as an exercise to teach people the horrors of bullying. Because when you see how your words can affect a plant, which is a different species, you understand that your words can affect your body. Your words can affect other people. All of these plants have the same amount of sunlight, the same amount of water.
So positive reinforcement has a big part in terms of how we build connections with our people. The question is, how do we do that in our workforce?
Can I share with you something?
And a big, easy, absolutely easy, it doesn't cost money, it doesn't cost training, it doesn't cost anything, is to make it very easy, very ubiquitous to just simply thank, talk, and celebrate. Recognize your friends, recognize what they do, how are they doing, what's happening. If their child went through their graduation, congratulates, celebrate the small moments which are beyond the work environment that we find ourselves in. It is these touch points that build that human connect in the virtual world, because it's that like that you did that the person goes and says, okay, this person appreciated what I just posted. Right? So that's what we talk about, how to build products and applications where we can bring humanity to our workforce. that can deepen relationships between people, so that people feel on the top of the Maslow's pyramid and say, okay, it's my desire to be appreciated and to be recognized, which is getting fulfilled as I'm part of this team. One way that we do it in our tools, and let me just share that here, is by actually doing a simple thing that we call as a simple kudos, right? So if somebody has done some activity, you can like their card. If somebody has done a great job, you can just, in a very, very ubiquitous platform, just on a day-to-day work basis, you can just thank people and let them know, hey, you did a great job. Or if somebody joined the team, you can just give a posted, hey, we have a new person and let's welcome them to the team. So there are very numerous ways like this. If somebody got a new certification or a new training got completed and you see that post, you can like it and congratulate them. So there are various ways that you can do something like this just to build that human connection, and it doesn't cost an extra dime to do it. You don't need a team offsite. It's a lot more instantaneous. It's a lot more democratic. You don't need somebody to plan and make an event happen, right? It's so democratic that people will do it naturally because people like being appreciated. If X appreciates Y, it's just a matter of time that Y will start appreciating what X is doing. Relationships always work in a bi-directional manner. Let me go to the second point, which is empowering workers with freedom and choice over what they're doing, unleashing their interests and passions, creating an alignment. So most of our people are aware of how Kanban boards, OKRs, these kind of thoughts and techniques help create alignment. How Kanban boards make sure that everybody who's on the board, hearing out the stand-up, understands what they're doing and gets a certain level of association that, okay, at least I know what's happening. It used to be better when we used to do physically face-to-face in a room environment or in front of a wall, because at least for that 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you know that everybody is hearing it out. Now, that might be that once somebody's time is gone, they're back to their own, whatever little thing they were doing virtually. So they're switched off from that call. So that's again the problem of the virtual environment, but at least the opportunity and the platform exists. The whole intent of OKRs was alignment, right? How do we create an alignment between what the leadership team is thinking and how it flows down the hierarchy in terms of the actual workforce working on things, so that they can understand what is the impact that's going to happen at the organization level as their work gets progressing. So this part is, I think, largely clear. Two things that I would like to add. And one is about this concept of card owners versus task assignment. For the longest time, when we used to be working in 80s and 90s, we used to do task allocation, right? We would say, hey, you go ahead and finish this task. We moved away in the lean agile community to say, okay, you are a card owner. But I think we missed a huge potential of improvement in that transition happening. Because when we move to a card owner, we miss highlighting the point that, hey, buddy, you own this. You own the end-to-end outcome of this card. So don't just think of that you have to do this task on this card. You are responsible for taking this card from the left of the value stream right through the last stage of the value stream, whatever that value stream is, right? So I think we missed an opportunity, and my submission to the group is reinforce the significance of what a card owner is and don't dilute it by thinking of it just as a resource task assignment. For the most part, even now in agile teams, we are working on our individual cards around people who are working in our sprint teams. we have not engaged, and there is very little connection between two individuals to say, hey, let me understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. So that whole concept that we wanted people to come to a stand up and make that relationship happen, to understand what you're doing, what is it value, how is it going to help, does it have any connection to what I'm doing? For the most part, there would be some motivated 20% individuals, but for the most part, that's not the workforce that we have. For the most part, we are focused on the card that has been given to us, making sure that that happens. And like I said, even for the card that we are working on, our view is to think of it as a task assignment that, hey, somebody has given me a card, let me just get it done. It's not to really understand whether that outcome of that card, expected outcome of the card, is really going to happen or not. So that if there's something missing in the story definition, something is missing in the acceptance criteria, I can have that meaningful conversation with the product owner to say, hey, it's not adding up. Is there something missing? Can you clarify this for me? It's only when we understand how what we are doing builds something which is more than what we could have done individually when we are part of a team, it's that element that builds us work satisfaction. The reason why we work in a team, in an organization, is because as a group, as a collective group, we can do things that are beyond what we perhaps could have done just as an individual. It's only a real entrepreneur who can drive things on his own and create that impact. But entrepreneurs are far and few between. Most of us are not entrepreneurs by nature. So we know that we can work in a team, and we can be part of an organization to be able to create something which is a greater and a more bigger impact. That's why it's important for us to be able to create an OKR, build the alignment, build the transparency, break it up into the actual execution project, so that I can understand how this user story or technical story that I'm working creates an impact all the way right up to the OKR that the leadership wanted it to be. So get people inspired and energized about these work outcomes. It's not adequate for a scrum master or a product owner to just have this meeting and say, okay, guys, this is what has to happen. One of the great things about the PI planning process, which I think again goes understated, is not just that big planning process, but it is about that people coming together in a room, focusing on what needs to be done, talking to each other, meeting one another, having that human connect to make that whole collective outcome of the PI process happen. That's the big, and yes, it is expensive. It costs a lot of money, but that is the real big deal about trying to do this whole thing together, where everybody comes together for 2-3 days, switches off from everything else, and puts their attention in doing the PI process together. It's that human relationship that they spend for those 2-3 days that sustains themselves for at least the next 5 sprints, whatever be the sprint duration. Now, we all, especially people, I think most of us who are perhaps on this call, understand the importance of flow. But I think the piece that we have missed is that while we have thought about work flowing in the value stream left to right, understanding how to optimize things, focus on throughput, making sure that system optimization is happening, not just local optimization. What we have missed is how to get the people in the middle of this flow equation. And most of us understand about flow of work, right? Anybody who's familiar with the Kanban community literature understands about flow of work. So I'm not going to spend time on that. What I'm going to spend time on is people experiencing flow. And this has significant impact to humanizing work. Mihail's work has been referred to within the Kanban community and the body of knowledge for a long period of time. But what was my epiphany moment is that when I am letting people pull work, they are themselves choosing to work where they would be either in one of these three states rather than in these three states. I'm hoping that my arrow is visible as I'm doing the session, because when people are pushed to do something, there's a high chance that they are in this zone. They're in this anxiety, worry, apathy, boredom, relaxation zone. But when they are in this zone, because they have pulled work which they believe for their skill level, they have a certain level of challenge in making sure that they can accomplish, then they experience a flow zone. That is when they have the most satisfaction. So pull is not just because we want to reduce WIP. That is what the Kanban literature has always talked about, that, hey, implement WIP by using pull. What I'm trying to highlight today is that implementing WIP also helps people in experiencing flow. So there's a lot of literature in the lean Kanban community where if we follow the spirit of what we have talked about, not just implement the practice, it naturally lends itself to humanizing work. In closing, we need to recognize this is a line responsibility. This is a responsibility of the team that's working on it. People engagement is not an HR responsibility. I find it very funny whenever people do it, tag post with humanizing work, they will hashtag it with HR. It is not an HR function. Engaging people in your team is the responsibility of people who are actually capable of making an impact, who are the line manager and the senior people in the team who can actually help to build that engagement. It cannot be done by somebody sitting outside the team, coming in and having one session and say, oh, we must be engaged, and therefore this is what we need to do. So we talked about how the importance of human moments, how the lack of that connect between two individuals has impacted people engagement, has impacted negatively how we empathize with one another, how that absence of that communication is creating a negative cycle, forget about getting a positive cycle. Because we start thinking that, am I in the right team? Am I even getting appreciated? Am I getting recognized for what I'm doing? And the easiest way to do that is to thank, talk, celebrate. The management 3.0 body of knowledge talks about kudos cards. It was a very simple way of doing it. The only issue that I have is how do we make that very ubiquitous in your day-to-day work management process, so that you don't have to go and remember and look at it and remember, okay, now I need to appreciate something because it just dawned on me that I got impressed with something. So how can I make it part and parcel of my day-to-day work engagement process itself? And as I said, I'll finish with this, that there is a lot of work around what we have done and spoken in the lean agile community over the last 2 decades that actually help humanizing work. We have not got that benefit because we have focused only on the work and the process optimization aspect of it. We have talked about it a lot. We have talked about people and empowerment, engagement, psychological safety. In fact, in the last Agile India conference that I attended, there was hardly any talk on Scrum, Kanban, Safe, Less, or any of these methods or any of these continuous improvement models. Everything was around how do we build engagement, how do we scale, how do we take it to the next level. But what is getting missed out is how do we create the workforce engagement, because disengaged teams can only give you an impact only up to a certain level. So that's my last slide. I would like to end here. it leaves me about 10 minutes to be able to take any feedback and any questions or any different points of view that you have. We, of course, at Digite are uh, very deeply passionate about how we can engage, how we can help build this engagement, people, workforce engagement, using our tools and capabilities within the tools. How can we do more and more of that? We believe that work management tools that just do work management are way past their state of maturity, that is given, that is taken for granted. And the next level of improvement in outcomes can only happen with engaged teams. I'll end my talk here and I'll open it up for Q&A.
All right, Suri, thanks for a great talk. Very excellent coverage of the topic. Folks, if you are on the call, please go ahead and ask your questions using the Q&A link that you see at the bottom of your screens. Suri, since you talked about tools just now, let's take up the first question, which came from Conchetta Phillips. And she says, do you find that people of different generations have different levels of adoption of such easy digital positive reinforcement tools? I see a lot of generations finding those awesome, but the boomers shying away from using such tools.
So yes, I think that is partly true. And I think more than the tool, it is the language that the middle management and the leadership teams use to engage with the younger generation. So I think it's a language issue more than the tool issue. I think they need to be, you need to speak in a different glossary and terminology to be able to engage with them better. I often hear this. In fact, in most conferences that I go to in the Lean Agile community, a favorite topic and a favorite pastime is what I call as leadership bashing, right? Oh, managements don't get it, leaderships don't get it. So just like we feel the younger generation doesn't get it, the younger generation feels that the leadership generation doesn't get it. And this disconnect will only keep on, will be there as long as we don't speak each other's language. So to me, it's a question of understanding that guy's sentiment. A younger guy cannot go to a senior guy and say, hey, don't do planning, don't do estimation, all estimation is bad, don't make budgets. We can't just do that. They are where they are because of they have been successful the way they work for 30, 40 years, 20, 30 years. You can't just wish that away. Similarly, we can't go to the workforce and say, okay, you are going to follow this process to the T, and this is the template, and you're going to follow this template, and you're going to fill your time on a daily basis because I want to see my sprint burn down. It's not going to happen. Even if they give you that data, they're going to give you for all practical purposes, highly bad quality data because they have not themselves kept track of it. If they have to get convinced and you want accurate data, you really need to sell why you are doing what you're doing. It will need a continuous reinforcement. It will need that human connect between the person who wants the outcome to happen from the people who they're expecting to respond. I hope I was able to do justice, but I think it's a fair problem. And yes, that disconnect exists. Absolutely.
There's also a little bit of sort of negative connotation of just positive reinforcement on social tools, but we'll cover that. We'll cover that separately. Let's take a couple of other questions. And Sudhi, if you stop sharing your slide, I want to share a special offer for today's attendees on my slides. So just go ahead and stop sharing. We put up the next question. So let's take up the question first. Firstly, just a couple of comments. Marian says, she's a boomer, but she uses these tool. Generation issues are besides the point. Bill Dominguez, Bill, thanks for your comment. Says building rapport across generations and empathy helps, and he really likes the presentation. So let's take a question from Stuart Gibbons. So Stuart's question is, do you think Kanban can sometimes create a conveyor belt effect where people do feel a never-ending queue of work to do? Do you have any tips on how to keep the benefits of making work visible while keeping people more engaged with what's on it and feel a sense of achievement more often?
So if we follow the the Kanban maturity model and how they talk about slowly moving from one level to the next, it will most definitely go ahead and make a significant impact in creating outcome building relationships. Uh, of course, it doesn't specifically talk about this human connect aspect of it, but if we do let people pull, if we do let an actual Kanban conversation happen when we are meeting for this 10-15 minutes every day, uh, if we actually go ahead and build uh, WIP limits which are properly balanced for the throughput that that value stage can deliver, it can go a long way. Um, for 99% of the population that is using Kanban, they just use a Kanban board to see work. And yes, while that's better than not seeing it at all, uh, the benefits there are significantly reduced. And I think you only get a very limited uh, outcome impact, because all that you're doing is you're seeing on a Kanban board what you were doing before. It doesn't create any value stream visualization. It doesn't help you understand where your constraints are. It doesn't help you understand how to create some level of system throughput thinking. None of those benefits accrue when you just have a simple Kanban board with a to-do in progress done. So yes, completely agree. But clearly, what we're talking about is human connects that go beyond even the Kanban method, and which are very simple, lightweight to do. Thank, talk, celebrate. If you just remember those three words, um, it's very, very powerful.
All right, folks, before we take up any other questions, just wanted to make sure that you all see this special offer that we have for webinar attendees today. If you're interested, contact us using the email on display, sales@nimblework.com. We'd love to have you take a look at Nimble and give us your feedback, use it for your team, and see how we implement some of the concepts that Sudhi described today. Looks like there aren't any other questions, but Sudhi, I had a question of my own, which is that we've seen, you said celebrate, connect, and I forget the third aspect of
Thank, talk, and celebrate.
Yes, thank, talk, and celebrate. I've seen this, I'm sure you have as well, that when people learn of something like this, they get all very excited by it and they implement it with gusto. And for a few weeks, it lasts very, very well. And then it kind of peters out. And then teams sort of get back to doing what they always do, cynicism sets in and all of that. So it requires a certain amount of sustained energy to keep it going. Whose responsibility is that? Is that a leadership responsibility? Is it a team leadership or team manager's responsibility? Is it the people themselves? Because ultimately it is the people who need to own it and people who need to feel it. What's your experience and recommendation on that?
So in concept, it is the team. In reality, it will not happen that way. Okay. Everybody in a team is not thinking about continuous improvement as much as we might want them to. That's just not real. That's never going to happen. And to imagine that somebody outside the team from the leadership or the HR will come and go ahead and do it, that's also not going to happen. It's not going to happen simply because not that they can't put a reminder. They can put a reminder and keep posting it, and they can do a nice banner image and they can keep doing it. But the fact is they're too distant. They are too away from the scenario. So for example, if a team has done some serious work in the last 3 months to make something happen, for the large part at the leadership level, they have so many teams that the significance of what has been accomplished is diluted. It gets mixed up with all the other noise in the system. It's only the people in the team and perhaps one level above that understands deeply what has now been done and can appreciate. So yes, simple things to have a just a reminder, like, okay guys, like you can say a day of appreciation or a day of kudos, a kudos day, to say, okay, let's, if you can think of somebody who really impressed you, just drop in a note. Simple things like that help. Again, continuous reinforcement help. But I would draw on the fact that we have all seen from the social collaboration tools that people that the nature of positive reinforcement is such that people tend to gravitate again and again at it. Some people are more vocal in appreciating and knowing their sentiment being expressed. Some people are less, but even those who are not very active, they still keep checking those platforms to just see what is happening and who's posting and what is happening in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And it is that collaborative human connect that we are trying to encourage within the work management ecosystem.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I think that is how we see a lot of usage of these social tools, that they build persistence simply because of the ability for you to go check and connect and stay connected. And Bill's comment is that if you look at the ADKAR model, the reinforcement, if the reinforcement is left out, people and companies will revert back to their bad habits or bad behavior. Great, folks. So we are out of time, actually. We are a little bit over time. So we're going to keep it there. If you'd like to, like I said, if you'd like to avail of this offer, please connect with our sales team. If you'd like to connect with either of us or both of us, feel free to do that. We would love to, connect with you, learn more about your environment, learn more about how we can potentially help, humanizing work in your organizations and teams, and or learn from you in terms of how you're doing it today. So with that, let's close it out. Suri, thanks a lot again. I'm glad that
Thanks everyone. Thanks for giving your time today.
Had this session. Thank you all. And we will be sending out a follow-up email with the links to the webinar. So, and if there are any questions that we haven't taken up, feel free to let us know, and we will get back to you in any case with answers to any unanswered questions. Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.